Most people think the 1% are different, smarter, luckier, more talented. That's the story we tell ourselves because it's comforting. If success belongs to people who were born different, then we don't have to question the choices we're making today. But what if that's a lie? What if the biggest difference between you and the person you admire isn't talent? It's the conversation happening inside your head every single day. Because every morning, two people wake up with the same 24 hours. One reaches for their phone. The other reaches for their purpose. One waits until they feel motivated. The other moves before motivation ever arrives. Years later, the world calls one of them successful, and the other wonders where all the time went. Here's the truth nobody likes hearing. Your future isn't decided by the biggest decision you make. It's decided by the smallest decision you repeat. Again, and again, and again. That's the mindset of the 1%. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. When you were younger, you probably imagined a different version of yourself. Someone confident, someone disciplined, someone who finished what they started. Somewhere along the way, that picture became blurry. Not because you stopped dreaming, because life became louder. Responsibilities, distractions, comfort, comparison. Without realizing it, you stopped asking, "Who am I becoming?" and started asking, "How do I get quick results?" That's where most people lose. They become obsessed with outcomes. More money, a better body, more followers, more recognition. None of those things are bad, but they're all temporary. Because every result eventually becomes normal. You reach one goal and immediately create another. The finish line keeps moving. The 1% don't build their lives around goals. They build their lives around identity. Instead of saying, "I want to become fit," they think, "I'm becoming someone who doesn't skip workouts." Instead of saying, "I want to be successful," they think, "I'm becoming someone who keeps promises." It's a small difference, but it changes everything. Because goals end, identity stays. The person who becomes disciplined doesn't have to chase discipline forever. It becomes part of who they are. And once your identity changes, your decisions begin changing without anyone forcing you. Everyone talks about managing time. Very few people talk about managing attention. But attention is where every great life begins. Think about your average day. Before breakfast, you've already seen hundreds of posts, other people's opinions, other people's achievements, other people's lives. Your mind becomes crowded before you've even listened to your own thoughts. The 1% understands something most people ignore. Whatever repeatedly enters your mind eventually enters your identity. That's why they're careful about what they consume. Not because they're trying to be perfect, because they know every distraction has a price. 1 hour doesn't feel expensive, but 1 hour every day for 5 years? That's a completely different story. They don't ask, "Is this entertaining?" They ask, "Is this helping me become the person I said I wanted to be?" Sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no. The important part is they stay conscious. Most people drift through life. The 1% choose it. And that's why they seem so focused. Not because they have stronger brains, because they've stopped giving their attention away to everything that asks for it. Comfort has never looked dangerous. That's why so many people never question it. It doesn't knock on your door and announce that it's about to steal your future. It whispers, "Just 5 more minutes. You've had a long day. You deserve a break." And honestly, none of those thoughts sound wrong. That's what makes them powerful. Because comfort rarely destroys your life in one dramatic moment. It does it quietly, one ordinary day at a time. One workout skipped because you're tired. One chapter you never read. One opportunity you tell yourself you'll take next month. Then another, and another. Until one day, you wake up and realize you've been waiting for a life that was never going to arrive on its own. The painful part isn't the time passed, it's realizing who you could have become if you had started sooner. Imagine meeting the version of yourself who never kept waiting. The version who showed up on the days motivation disappeared. The version who stayed focused while everyone else chased distractions. Would he look different? Of course. But the biggest difference wouldn't be his money, or his body, or his achievements. It would be the way he carries himself. Because every difficult decision he made became another reason to trust himself. That's what comfort steals first. Not your dreams, your self-trust. And once you stop believing your own promises, everything else becomes harder. People love celebrating big moments. The promotion, the trophy, the business that finally succeeds. But nobody applauds the ordinary Tuesdays. Nobody celebrates the 100th workout, or the night you chose learning instead of entertainment. Those moments don't make headlines, but they build lives. The 1% understands something that doesn't sound exciting, but changes everything. Your future is usually hidden inside your routine, not your biggest decision, your smallest repeated one. You don't become disciplined because you wake up one day feeling different. You become disciplined because you repeat the same difficult choice until it becomes familiar. That's why successful people often look calm. They're not constantly making huge decisions. Most of their important decisions were made months or years ago. Now they're simply living by the standards they created. While everyone else keeps negotiating with themselves every morning, they've already decided who they are. And that removes so much mental noise. Discipline becomes quieter, more natural, almost automatic. Not because the work became easier, because the decision was already made. Here's a question that changed my perspective. What if your future self could watch everything you do today? Not just the big moments, the small ones. The way you speak to yourself after making a mistake, the promises you keep, the excuses you repeat, the hours you give away without thinking. Would he recognize someone moving toward him or someone moving further away? Most people ask, what should I do? The 1% ask, who would I have to become for this decision to feel natural? That's a completely different mindset. Because when your identity changes, your actions begin following it. You stop relying on motivation. You stop chasing perfect timing. You stop waiting for permission. You simply become the kind of person who does the work, quietly, consistently, even when nobody notices. Especially when nobody notices. Maybe you've spent years believing that extraordinary people were simply born different. Maybe you've looked at successful people and thought, they have something I don't. But after everything we've talked about, you know that's not the real difference. The real difference begins long before success becomes visible. It begins the moment someone decides that their standards will no longer depend on their feelings. The moment they stop asking life to become easier and start becoming stronger. You don't join the 1% because life finally gives you a chance. You join it because you stop wasting the chances you've already been given. So when this video ends, don't promise yourself you'll change your entire life tomorrow. That's what you've always done. Instead, keep one promise today, just one. Because self-respect isn't built in one extraordinary moment. It's built in ordinary moments that nobody else sees. One promise becomes 2. 2 become 10. 10 become a new identity. And one day, someone will look at your life and wonder how you became so disciplined, so focused, so different. They'll think it happened overnight, but you'll smile. Because you'll know the truth. It started with one quiet decision. The decision to stop thinking like everyone else and start becoming the person you were always capable of being.